My back pain started when I was about 16 years old. And initially, like most people, I didn't really think it was a serious problem. It was annoying and on my mind as an issue I needed to solve, but I never would have thought that it would last a decade of my life and get progressively worse. You know, it sidelined me for a game in basketball, high school basketball, but in the beginning, my back pain was kind of on and off. It was like a recurring thing. And each time that it came back, it got a little progressively worse. So when I discovered like that was the trend, like, man, every time my back goes out or every time my back pain returns, it's worse than it was before. It's probably around the time when I decided, okay, I need to do something about this. Like the trend is going in the wrong direction. I remember doing physical therapy for it. It helped a little bit, but eventually you get discharged and it came back again and it was worse than it was before. So we'll say I'm a couple of years into it now and just start seeking out alternative forms of treatment, chiropractic, stuff like that. Nothing really seemed to get to the root of the problem. The trend just continued. It just kept getting worse every time it came back. And then I don't know exactly what age I was. I was probably around 22 around that time when didn't go away anymore. It was just constant back pain. And it was not just, oh, it came back again and it's worse than before. It was just getting worse over time. And that is when it became very scary and really serious. So I'd say, I guess that was 5-6 years into my back journey where it started affecting me mentally in that way. You know, I remember periods of time in my life where I would spend most of my time laying down, laying on my back, laying on the ground. I remember I had an apartment with a couple friends in Huntington Beach, and I would just be laying on my back in the living room watching TV for a lot of the time. My friends would know, like, oh yeah, his back is bad or his back is out. That was just kind of the norm. And I was 22 years old. And I remember healthcare professionals, physical therapists would tell me, man, you're way too young for this. And that stuck with me. Like those kind of little comments definitely affected me because it made me feel broken. Something was wrong with me. I worried a lot about my future. I worried a lot about how I would get through the rest of my life if my back is already this bad and I'm only 22 years old. I remember one chiropractor tell me that if I didn't change something, I would be in a wheelchair by the time I was 30. And I remember another physical therapist tell me that his goal for me was to just hold off from surgery for 5 more years because he believed that back surgery would be better by that time. You know, that had a lot of impact on me. Like, wow, so back surgery is not an option for me right now because it's not good enough. And your goal for me, your best hope for me is that I'm going to get back surgery in my future. That's not a very good feeling. So all of this led to a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. And there were definitely times in my life where I was never diagnosed clinically with any of this, but I definitely had periods of time where I was depressed about this, just not being able to participate in my normal activities, not being able to participate with my friends, not being able to go surfing or play basketball anymore. Those were the things I loved and I couldn't do them. So what do? You sit at home and you just dwell on the fact that your back hurts. Definitely a lot of mental effects, and the fear and the hopelessness was just like an underlying theme of how I felt. And so to get to like the turning point of my journey where things turned around, it was, I can tell you the day. I was 24 when I wrote in my journal that I'm going to take it into my own hands. The reason that was the turning point for me is not that that day that I wrote in my journal cured my back. That was my rock bottom. And that every day after that was a step in the right direction because I took responsibility for my own health. And I no longer was searching for my guru that was going to fix me. I was going to fix myself. And so it may have taken a few more years for me to actually get out of back pain and be able to say that I am out of pain and I'm living the life that I want to live. I'm surfing again. I'm surfing big waves. I was not limited by my back anymore. I discovered the solution before I was fully out of pain. I knew I was on the right track. I knew I was doing the right things. I knew that my core was something to do with the solution. So when I knew that I was doing the right thing was also when I decided, all right, I need some credibility. I need some more education. And I went to physical therapy school. And so I was in physical therapy school at that time when I was 28 years old. And that entire time in PT school, I was just 100% focused on the spine, the back, conditions of the back, how to heal the back. And, I realized a lot about why the profession isn't super effective at healing back pain, why it didn't work for me, even though I was in and out of PT for a decade of my life as a patient. And I did a lot of thinking about that while in PT school. Like, why didn't this work for me? I do have a lot to say about that too. I had been doing a lot of research. Internet was widely available by then. And so I was able to just dive deep into the rabbit hole of the root causes of back pain. And I really spent a lot of time in that area, like the causes, because I still believe that you have to understand the problem before you can fix it. The things that made the most sense to me, that really connected the dots for me and my body, and the fact that I didn't only have back pain, but I had knee pain and I had some TMJ and I had foot issues and I had neck pain. It was pretty global problem for me. And so what made the most sense was Dr. Vladimir Yanda's crossed posture syndrome. And so I just kept finding myself going in that direction. Like, this makes sense to me. When I started to do the solution, I was coming from it from that perspective. Okay, certain muscles are tight, other muscles are weak and lengthened. So the goal is to strengthen the weak muscles and lengthen the tight muscles. And so I had some success with that, but I did find out eventually it's not really that simple. And because the body works synergistically. So I kind of approached the body from a neuromuscular perspective more as a whole than disciplines like physical therapy, which tend to break down the body into parts, anatomy. All right, we're dealing with one muscle here, the tensor fascia latae. We're going to stretch or massage or blah, 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 that muscle. But really, that muscle doesn't operate alone. It never has and it never will. It operates as a group of muscles synergistically with that group and also synergistically with other groups of muscles. So the hip flexors don't operate in a vacuum as a group either. They are counterbalanced by the hip extensors and by the abdominals and by the lower back muscles, which are all surrounding the core. It was really a melting pot of different disciplines that taught me what was right and what was wrong. And it was really when I got down on the floor and I started just focusing on the basics. I was no longer trying to do the exercises that kept hurting me, like the complex things that, I was in this mindset like, ooh, if it's a more advanced exercise, I will get more benefit from that. But those were the ones that were hurting me. And it was at a point where I got pushed down and back so many times from setbacks that I had to just only focus on the most simple things. And the basics were core engagement. So being on the floor, feeling that connection to the floor, trying to mimic the way that we originally developed our core, which was as babies and infants, by feeling the biofeedback that the floor gives you when you contract your muscles into the floor. That's what's happening when we first develop our core. And then I experimented with it and I took it in many different paths of how can I build on this and how can I integrate this core engagement with other movements. And so when I started going down that path, that's when I started making progress. You can't only learn how to engage your core, you have to learn how to engage your core and do things. So when you can do things with your core in a healthy engagement, with your spine supported, your spine doesn't hurt. Your spine doesn't get set back. It was at that time when I knew I'm onto something. I know that I'm going to keep exploring this and I know that it's going to keep providing me benefit. I had that confidence, and we can tie that back to the mental health issues too, because I believe that one of the main things that leads to psychological impact and mental trauma from chronic back pain is it's true suffering when you have no end in sight and you have no solution that you know of at your disposal. And so that it feels endless. And it's not when I got out of pain that my mind frame turned around. It's when I knew that there was going to be an end. It's when I knew that I had some control over my pain. And it's when I felt confidence that I can do this, that everything changed. That confidence is what gave me so much healing to my mind. And also, then that led to more healing in my body, because when you move with confidence, it's actually a healthier movement pattern than when you move in fear. And moving in fear leads to aberrant movement patterns, which is an unhealthy way of moving. It's a protective way of moving, and it does reinforce the problem. So it all kind of folds into itself, and it almost seems like it's a compounding benefit. When you turn the corner, you start getting better, everything starts cascading in the right direction. That was happening for me. And I got out of PT school. I knew right away that I was dedicating my life to helping other people to heal their backs too, because I knew at that time even that it was a really common problem. Little did I know how common it was and how severe that it impacted people's lives. I never really thought about how it affected families and relationships and professions and the ability to provide for your family and keep jobs, and all these things have become very apparent to me in my later years. Here we are now. Fast forward 11 years later since graduating, and tens of thousands of people helped later as well.
I'll be back next week, and until then, get down on the floor and connect to your core.